So tonight we have our presentation. We have Brian Penschow moderating. We have Stacey Kliesch, Ed Rothe, and William Martin as our panelists. And our presentation is about the value of the architect.
Someone needs to unmute Brian.
There we are. Thank you very much, Kristen, and congratulations. I know we're going to have a great year with you at the helm.
Thank you, Brian.
This course tonight is 1.5 learning unit credits if you're registered with your AIA number. And are we going to provide certificates for those that are not registered? We will get you a certificate. I want to read tonight the antitrust statement just to get that out of the way so everybody knows that it is the practice of the American Institute of Architects and its members to comply strictly with all laws, including federal, state, and state antitrust laws that apply to AIA operations and activities. Compliance with the letter and spirit of the antitrust laws is an important goal of the AIA and is essential to maintaining the Institute's reputation for the highest standards of ethical conduct statement in compliance with antitrust law. Okay, now that that's out of the way, that's a little bit of the housekeeping. We can get to the fun part, the course description. We're going to talk about the value of the architect. We have 4 great panelists tonight for you. Many of you know who these people are, have heard us before, have heard us talk, but we're all going to introduce ourselves so that you can hear who we are and how we can help you communicate the value of the architect. Our learning objectives for tonight are to demonstrate the need for architects to advocate for the profession. We're going to provide examples of how to communicate the value of the architect to the public. We're going to learn how to motivate architects to build their own brand and inspire leadership in advocacy. And we're going to educate members about the value of outreach to the public. Hopefully, that's the goal. So we have a few tools that we can use talking about the value of the architect: brand and identity, interview, initial client meeting, proposals, professional organizations, political action committee, network of colleagues, community service, the press, a value proposition canvas, word of mouth testimonials. These are all things that we're going to talk about how they apply to communicating the value of the architect. So I want to open this up to the panel. Ed, can you start us off and tell us what is value? What is the value of the architect in your opinion? What are your thoughts?
I'm sorry, Brian, do you want us to introduce ourselves first?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. Please, everybody. Ed, introduce yourself first.
Okay, thank you. Well, I'm Edward Rothe, FAIA, retired from the practice of architecture, but still trying to serve and test the boundaries of our profession and expanding them when I can. I'm a graduate of Pratt Institute School of Architecture. I started my career in Princeton, New Jersey, with a firm that did architecture and construction. And the first thing I learned was cost control and the uncommon project delivery method called design build. After 4 years, I left that firm and joined an award-winning firm in New York City, where I could test my talents as a designer. 1974, I co-founded Roth Johnson Architects in a basement office in Metuchen, New Jersey. Alan Johnson and I grew the firm to be one of the state's largest and most recognized firms, and won many awards for our design. Our clients included real estate developers, colleges and universities, healthcare institutions, private corporations, and government agencies. The firm grew to be almost 100. In addition to the practice, I was very active in our profession. I served AIA New Jersey in many capacities for many years. I was the AIA New Jersey president in 1987 and focused on issues of public awareness and public policy. In 1988, I was advanced to the College of Fellows, for the jury said, quote, his ability to achieve powerful architecture within tight economic constraints and significant contributions to our profession.
Stacey,
Me.
please
Thank you.
introduce yourself to our attendees.
Thank you, Brian. My name is Stacey Kliesch. I'm a past president of AIA New Jersey and the Architects League. I'm a registered architect in New York and New Jersey and a New Jersey certified interior designer. I also have my real estate salesperson license. In the 90s, I worked in mostly the commercial sector, doing contract interiors work, assisted livings, K-12 and higher education. And then I became a sole practitioner in 2003. And my work has since shifted primarily to residential. But each one of those different sectors has lent an element to my learning how to provide better value to my clients and understanding the needs of each of those different client types. I'm very excited to be here today speaking on this panel. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Stacey. And Bill, would you please introduce yourself to our attendees?
I don't know if I can compete with that. Okay. All right, my name is William J. Martin. I have a sole proprietor practice right now. I used to do bigger buildings, industrial, office, commercial. I now do primarily high performance residential, sustainable design type things. I attended Carnegie Mellon University where I studied architecture and managerial economics. I always had an interest in the economics of design and the background in that. I then went to Pratt Institute. My degree is in architecture from Pratt Institute, my Bachelor of Architecture. I've been in private practice for 30 years this year. I'm focused on promoting the profession as a whole. I'm co-chairman of the Public Awareness Committee at the state level, along with Bruce Turner. And I work very closely with Stacey Kliesch, our advocacy consultant. And that's me. So let's go.
Thank you very much, Bill. And I am your moderator. My name is Brian Penschow. I've been a licensed architect for 6 years now. I'm AIA New Jersey's vice president. Before I became licensed, I've worked on nearly every building type. Currently now, I'm mostly writing specifications for 40 hours a week, and 15 to 20 hours a week, I'm doing my own architecture, residential, mostly waterfront stuff. So that's what I enjoy. I have a lot of passion for architecture, so I'm not going to list all the stuff that I do for AIA. We'll be here for a while. So now that you know all of us, let's get right back into where I was before. Ed, I want to know your opinions on what does it mean? What is the value of an architect? What are we talking about exactly?
Was that my
Yes,
question?
Ed. Yes, Ed.
Well, I'm very passionate about architecture, and I think most of us that are in the practice do it. I feel that the profession is a high risk, low yield business. Not really where you want to be. You want to be the other way around. But I don't feel we are. My father told me when I said I wanted to be an architect, he said, "It's a great profession if you're independently wealthy." Those were good thoughts. But I really think that the value of our profession needs to be promoted to the public in a very, very different way. When I was president, people asked the question, what do architects do? And I think that question is still unanswered. I think we all know what we do, what our services are. We're a very diverse profession. We have very different clients. We may see our profession differently. And I'm excited about this panel and trying to answer specific questions about the value of our firm.
So Bill,
Of our practice, of our profession and our practice.
so Bill, tell me, you and I discussed a little bit about the difference between just value being related to money and what other types of value the architect can bring. Can you give us some insights on that?
Yes, you can hear me okay, correct?
Yes.
Okay, I'm gonna make sure everyone can hear me. You see on the slide on the screen right now, everyone can see that slide, is that right?
I
Okay.
hope so.
Okay, I hope so. All right. There are some definitions. These definitions are very important. This will be a good slide deck for you to download afterwards. Here you see general definitions of value, cost, time, risk, and then the bottom one is the goal. You have to realize, and I know many of you probably in practice already understand this, but this is the biggest issue that clients have. I mean, we talk about our value all the time. We know we're valuable. We studied this profession intensely. We've been in practice. We're doing this on a daily basis. We know that we bring good value to the client. The clients are focused on value in a little bit of a different way. So if you have insight into how the clients are perceiving value, it will help you to communicate your value, your firm's value, your team's value, or your personal value if you're running a sole proprietorship like me. Clients, this is important. Clients fear risk. Now you see risk up here on the value slide. Clients fear risk more than anything else. It drives almost all the decision making in one way or another. So in short, the value of the architect is contained within the minimizing of the client's risk while achieving their goals. So that's an important message to communicate to your clients.
You want to minimize their pain and maximize their gain.
But you want to minimize the risk. There's a fear of loss. There's a fear that the investment they're about to make in a building or an addition or a home is going to be less or not as valuable as what they believe it to be. So you need to minimize risk so that they can maximize value. You need to communicate that to them, because once they realize that you're with them to help them achieve their goals, they will understand better what your value is. It's not about price. It's not about fees. It's about communicating to the client that you want to help them to minimize risk. And it's also not about good design. Good design is not what you think it is. It's not what we were taught in architecture school. To the client, good design is the result of your services achieving the goals of the client. That's how you communicate your value to the client. That's what we have to do in order to communicate effectively that we're going to minimize risk for the client. The other thing is, if we have time at the end when we get to the questions, I would also like to explain why the word design the word design has become a 4-letter word, and we need to be careful how we use the word design, but we'll get into that later.
So Stacey, do you have any insights about the value of the architect, or specifically the value we're talking about today?
Yes, I think for clients who are working with an architect for the first time, or in a circumstance where they are just getting their feet wet on the process, they see the role of the architect as the person who can get them a permit. And they don't necessarily understand all the other elements where the architect is their partner in finding a successful solution to their problem. I know when I meet with a client, usually they have an idea of what the design solution should be before we even have our first meeting. I try at that first meeting to drill down to understand what was the problem that made you start thinking about needing to hire an architect or go through a renovation or build a new building, regardless of what type of client they are. They have some sort of situation or a problem that occurred that made them say, hey, we need to make a construction change here. So that's really the question that I think we need to answer first, so that I can explain to them, my role is to assist you in thinking through and talking through that problem and finding the best solution for you financially, spatially, relationship-wise, functionally. And those are things that very often, even if the client thinks they already have the solution in their mind, they haven't really thought through all those elements, because unless you've been through the process once, twice, multiple times, you might not understand all the different elements that go into finding the correct solution. So that's really the value that we bring to the project, and need to convey that and make sure the communication and trust are both there, so that the client can be comfortable and open and honest, and we can be as well in our responses to them.
So when we're talking about the client and the client's goals, what are the best practices for determining what the client's needs are and communicating them back to the client? Often the client has a problem, has a well-defined problem, but they may have many others that they don't even realize yet. So how do we communicate those ideas directly to the client? Whoever wants to take this one can jump right in.
When I meet with a client, I usually ask to have an opportunity to walk through the entire space, get to know everybody who's either living or working, or whatever the type of building it is. But I want to get an idea for who is going to be using this space when it's finished, and let me see how and where they are now, so I can get an idea of what everybody's goals are. Sometimes there's only one spokesperson that you're going to be meeting with, whether it's one member of the family or one person from a company who's been assigned to work with you, and they may only be able to share their perspective with you. And even if they are the decision maker, I personally feel, in order for me to best answer their needs and help them reach their goals, is I need to understand all the different activities and people who are utilizing the space.
So Ed, in your business, you had a lot of different stakeholders. So how did you manage the fears and the wants of the different stakeholders and communicate your value to each stakeholder through the process?
Well, the beginning of my practice, our clients were real estate developers, commercial real estate developers. It was the late 70s, the beginning of the 80s, and there was a huge amount of work being generated by commercial real estate developers building office space, speculative office space. I learned a lot about their needs. Their needs were economic, money. They wanted to make money. It taught us that buildings are real estate to a lot of people. They're real estate investments, and they're made by all of the clients. And I'll explain that later. But working with the developers, they indicated that things that were important to them were the cost of the building, how fast they could get it up, and how efficient the building was. And when I talk about efficiency, I'm talking about space efficiency, because that's what they leased. Oh, that's what they built if it was a built-to-suit client. So time was also very important, but the efficiency was, give me the space they're looking for, rental space. I don't rent the public halls. I don't rent the common space. So it was very important, and we learned in a design that the efficiency, the area efficiency related to the economics was very important to them. And we tried our best to give it to them. And we did a fairly good job at it, while still being able to do cost conscious, yet still recognize design awards. But we also applied that basic value when we went after other projects. if it was a school. What was really important to those clients, our school clients, was how many chairs they could get, particularly in New York. They referred to what their needs were for classroom space. That's what they wanted to pay for. Healthcare, they wanted beds, exam rooms. It didn't, so that same philosophy of area efficiency, as cost effective as it could be, were the important values that they saw and that we brought to our clients. Very much along the lines of what Stacey was saying with her clients, and her clients were much different than ours, but still the goal was the same. That's what our clients see as the value, and that's what we should be selling them.
So I have seen developers in the past really want to get one more housing unit, not just to maximize the economic return, but also to provide one more housing unit for somebody that needs a housing unit. You know, it's not always just to maximize dollar gains, but also to maximize the utility of the building that they're putting up. So how does an architect balance adding value for pure economic gain and also adding design value that would lift the entire neighborhood, that would create a better space for everyone? Bill, why don't you go ahead and give me your ideas on the difference between economic value and design value?
Yes, I agree with you. I don't think all the decisions are always made based on economics. I know it's a big part of what real estate developers do, but understanding the client's goals, and these goals are complex, is important for the architect. And not all of the goals of the project are related to the architecture. There can be a lot of goals. And as I mentioned earlier, in trying to minimize risk, developers and homeowners will talk about, oh, I'm afraid I'm going to spend too much money. Oh, I'm afraid I'm not going to get the return on my investment that I thought. This is the fear of risk expressing itself, in economic terms. So architects, should recognize that fear and the fear of risk is why they are pressuring you for time and why they're trying to drive your fee down, because they have goals that are incorporated that are not just about the building. Goals can be very complex for any client. Sometimes it's sometimes their fear is of regulatory delays, time limits, market fluctuations, tax implications. All of those can factor in. Some of that doesn't have anything to do with what you're doing, but you need to understand it so that you can communicate your value to the client in terms of helping them achieve their goal. You're on their team, you're going to help them achieve that goal. And a lot of times when they hear that you understand the complexity of their goals, it makes them feel much more comfortable about spending the money that they need to spend on you, because you're going to help them achieve that goal. And without you, it's going to be much harder to achieve that goal. So, other complex parts of the goals, obviously investment of resources, money and capital, the future value of the completed project. They're trying to maximize value in the longer term, or are they trying to maximize value in the short term? And a perfect example of that in terms of a client is if you have a client who's designing their dream home. I'm going to stick to residential because it's just simpler to explain. They're going to be willing to invest more in you and in the project because they're looking at a longer time horizon. They're going to utilize this, the thing that you're going to create with them. And that longer time horizon gives them a different perspective on their goals. The other side of that coin is short-term value, short-term time horizon would be a house flipper. If you're going to work for a house flipper, you have to understand that their goals are very short-term oriented. They're not interested in what the value of that project is in 20 years. They want to know what the value of that project is in 20 minutes or 20 days, because that's what they're trying to, that their goal is to minimize in terms of investment, maximize value, and flip and move on to the next project. They're very short-term and long-term time horizon. So these goals can get complex. So you need to question your client, like Stacey said, question them, find out what their long and short-term goals are. And you'll find that they don't always want to talk to you about it. Sometimes they're hesitant to talk to you about it. So you've got to talk with them, find ways, to loosen them up. The other thing about clients and goals is you may not be dealing with the client. You may be dealing with the decision maker that's creating the building, who's tasked with hiring the architect, hiring the contractor, and creating the building. But the clients are really the people who occupy the building.
Right, like housing authorities or city housing authorities that are putting out RFPs that don't have,
They're not the decision maker, but they have goals. They have personal goals in their positions, and they have long and short-term goals as they are tasked with, solving a particular problem. So you need to understand those goals also. Sometimes they're concerned with how the project will be perceived by other decision makers or their peers or their bosses. So you be careful about that. Is the project, are you trying to achieve an image or a brand of some kind? Does this project make aesthetic sense? They're going to want to hear from you about that. Now, of course, we're all about aesthetics, so that's great. You want to make sure that you communicate that the project that you're going to help them to create facilitates the efficient actions of others within the project. For example, a factory. You have a factory, you want to make sure you design it efficiently for the purpose of people moving throughout the factory and being efficient in producing the product that the decision maker is trying to maximize profit on. So, the question there is, does this make functional sense? And you want to make sure you understand their goals in relationship to function. And then there's balancing the benefits of the project against the resources expended, like Ed was talking about. He's talking about, maximizing the value of the building by maximizing, the usable space, minimizing space that's less usable, and things like that. And the question there for the client is, does this make economic sense? So we're trying to, through our conversations with the clients initially and as we go through the project, identify what their goals are so that you can align with their goals so you can help them achieve them. We need to communicate the importance of assisting clients in achieving their goals, period, whether it's the decision maker, whether it's the homeowner, whether it's a flipper, whether it's a hospital administrator, whatever. We need to be able to communicate that's where the value lies in architect services, in my opinion.
Okay, I want to pivot away just for 1 second to another question here that's not on the slide deck, but it has to do with the way that we're procuring our clients. Is it best that we have a set of skills that match up with the client's goals, or should we modify our services and our delivery methods to meet those client goals to get the job? It's kind of a question of, is niche better and find the right client, or now we have a client, let's service them the best way we can by discovering their goals? Go ahead, Stacey.
I find that there are certain clients who are only looking for an architect who has designed almost exactly their project before. And so if you don't have in your portfolio that, their project is your regular routine, and you can show them examples of the way you properly and successfully solved that problem for other clients, then they can't see what value you're going to bring to the table. And there are architects who, you kind of know what you're going to get if you work with them. And so if that aligns with what your plans are for the project, then you probably feel pretty confident going into it that you're going to have a home run. I think it's very, very important for architects to be able to be flexible, be adaptable, be good listeners, and remember that the projects in your portfolio were for different people under different circumstances with different budgets and different sites. So, there are certain projects in my portfolio that I love, but there are lots and lots of projects in my portfolio that were successful, whether they were my personal preference or not. I'm solving the problem of that client as a unique individual and not rolling out my design routine for client after client after client. So I think different clients have a different level of comfort with that. I feel like I've had professional success being able to demonstrate to my clients that I can create success regardless of what their particular unique needs are, because I'm a good listener and I am creating something for them that is a sum of all the unique elements of their project, their site, their budget, their family, or their business.
When they do that, they're trying to minimize risks, Stacey, because they want to know that you can accomplish their project, exactly like you did for the other person. That is a form of their fear manifesting in trying to minimize risk. I just wanted to point that out.
Also, a lot of times if the client has to answer to a board or has to answer to partners, that client is much safer saying, well, we picked an architect that's done 9 of these, okay? As opposed to saying, I really like this architect. He hasn't done any of these, but that's risk. That's risk. It's much harder to sell. So I think experience of your portfolio is very helpful, particularly because if you do a good job meeting the goals and the needs of that particular client, so you've done it twice, they are also helped sell the value.
So does your perceived
and introduce you to new clients. Okay.
Does your perceived value go up then if you're in a niche market and you have that experience?
That's true. Now, we've also, however, constantly over a 35-year practice and the economics of the market, you have to reinvent yourself. However, you can reinvent yourself, we felt, is because of the services and the approach that you as an architect, in terms of your training, your education, and your experience. They're very similar. You can sell them almost in the same way, which I tried to indicate, earlier. I think that's important, is to understand what your client does, and if there's a market for it, you should be successful being a niche architect. But you may want to broaden for your own personal goal. Say, I want to do other kinds of buildings. When we first tried to get into healthcare, I made a presentation, and the client, we were selected. We put a very good team together. It wasn't just our firm, but we had never done a hospital. We had never done healthcare. And I mentioned in the presentation that we were experts in buildings we had never done before. And the client said, I've never heard an architect say that. I said, well, I've got some examples. And actually, our firm was awarded 2 different jobs, which I use as an example. One was the first handicap school, new building, ground up, by the state of New Jersey, up in Bergen County. And we designed a wonderful building. In fact, it won a number of AIA awards. It got published. It took a tremendous amount of research that needed to be done for us to really understand what that building had to be. We not only did we talk to the administrator and the teachers, but we also observed the students. A very emotional job, very satisfying job. But we use that as an example of that you can apply and try and sell for new work, even if you haven't done one. We also did another job for the state of New Jersey, which was a beneficial insect rearing laboratory. Okay, we had to deal with bug security. There was not another building. There was one other building in the country in Houston, Texas, which we visited. But again, it was a successful job. It was a small job, but it was one that we used in marketing constantly. We were looking for new work.
So that just pivots me to the next slide here that I think is really great. Tell us about any pro bono work that you do and why. Who gains value from architectural pro bono work? And I can see that doing some pro bono work can get you the experience to get some of these jobs or for your portfolio at least. So Stacey, do you do any pro bono work?
Yes, I've done pro bono work for the Girl Scouts. I've done pro bono work for organizations that I'm a member of. Sometimes an organization will be starting a fundraising campaign for a new construction project. And if I am available and feel qualified, sometimes I'll offer my services during the fundraising campaign as something that I would donate to the project. And there are a number of reasons. First of all, of course, if the organization that is reaching out to you is someone that you care about, the organization is something you care about, then it's an outstanding opportunity to be able to give back to that organization. Even if they don't necessarily need the money, there's always a room for that money to be spent on something else. Sometimes it's the opportunity to get involved in a new sector, such as you mentioned. So my work for the Girl Scouts, for example, was related to their camps, and I hadn't done any work like that before. So I was on the board of the Girl Scouts. I did multiple projects for them in the 90s, which were a gift back to them, as well as an opportunity for me to try out a new building type and add to my portfolio. So it's a win-win for both parties.
So Bill, what about pro bono work? Who gets the value?
The way I look at pro bono work is that pro bono work in a community is an investment in goodwill for your firm, so that people will know that and understand that you're a good person who tries to help people achieve their goals. I keep going back to goals again. But like Stacey, I've done pro bono work for Girl Scouts. I've done pro bono work for the Boy Scouts, some church groups. I do pro bono work from time to time for municipalities for very small things that they may need. It's an investment in the goodwill of that community. I've also done pro bono work for people in need, such as people who have had major fires in their homes and also had significant injuries that were life-changing for them. And I accepted some pro bono work for that as well. So like I said, who gets the value? The client gets the value, and the architect gets the investment of goodwill in the community. And don't underestimate the investment of goodwill. It comes back to you in other ways, in ways that allow you to make a living and be able to communicate value to other clients. I've done this for someone in need, and people like to hear that. It gives them a good feeling about you, and it allows you to talk more openly about why you need to charge the fees you need to charge, so that you can get the fees that you need to support what you're doing professionally, so that you can make a living practicing what we all love to practice.
So we touched on these questions, these next questions, just a little bit in some of the topics we've been talking about. Like, how do we communicate the value of the architect to the public in different sectors, like government, healthcare, transportation, other sectors that have sometimes have to use us, sometimes they don't have to use us, but we can be valuable. How do we get that word out?
AIA New Jersey has recently started a Value of the Architect post-pandemic lecture series. We have completed 6 webinars so far, and we have 3 more coming up scheduled for 2021. And they are programs specifically developed for users in different sectors. So it could be for developers or elected officials or customers, educators. So we presented these programs to assist current building users and developers to understand what design changes may be coming up as a result of our experience with COVID. And our programs included multifamily housing, retail, education, healthcare, corporate interiors, and what we have coming up next are transportation, historic buildings, and warehouse industrial.
I think oftentimes we have some shock to our system, our society, that always reaffirms the need for architects and good design in our society, whether it's the attack on the Capitol building or COVID-19 or any of these things that are coming. We keep school shootings. We keep coming back to architects can help. And we keep telling everybody architects can help. Do we need to push stronger that architects can help, or do we need to take the reins? Ed, what do you think?
Well, yeah, I think that webinar series in terms of designing in a period of COVID was very good, and it's the kind of thing that we should be doing more of. And I've been campaigning, if you will, with Bill and Stacey about a few things. In fact, one of the things that we just recently were able to achieve is this archive project that was done actually in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, which I thought was quite effective in terms of answering that question of communicating to different sectors. We had a publication that was called Architecture New Jersey, and it was, in those days, it was a magazine, and it was done quarterly, and we actually sold ads to help support it. But the message and that we had was really promoting architecture and the value of architecture. And in those days, we didn't have the technology that we had. We sent it out, mailed it out. In fact, it was almost like a newsletter, and we sent it to targeted audiences that deal with architects, planning board, building department, code officials, those that provide information on architecture, like libraries and schools. And actually that publication for its day and its time became a resource to the community, to the public, to government officials. And I'm working with Stacey and Bill now and the committee to try and get a regular column, if you will, or story about the value of the architect, the value of architecture, because I feel, and many others do as well, that our profession is undervalued and threatened, which keeps our fees low. And we really need to promote the goal of increasing the public awareness of our work.
You bring up a lot of good points, and it's lucky that we have the chairperson of the Public Awareness Committee, here as the panelist today. So Bill, tell us, how does an architect, an AIA architect or another architect, get involved in promoting the value of architect to people outside of the profession?
Okay, on an individual level, we would like all of our AIA New Jersey members to be on social media and be out there promoting their own value. At the AIA New Jersey Public Awareness Committee, we are doing it on a different level. We are promoting the profession in general and trying to steer people towards architects as problem solvers to solve their problems and help achieve their goals. So we're doing it from the top. And what I would like all of our members to do is to dovetail to what we're doing from the bottom up. So members should not be shy about posting things that they're working on, things that they're doing on social media. I mean, of course, you don't want to invade anyone's privacy. Your clients can, be concerned about that. You don't want to give away any proprietary information, but you should engage in social media, use hashtags, get your message out. You'd be surprised who's listening. There's a lot of people listening, but through those social media outlets and our blog, we use the blog to create content, and then we leverage it out through social media. Every one of our members should be doing that on their own firm level. So that's how we would get the message out. And what we're trying to do is to get the message to politicians and to journalists. And we're out there to help, communities and news people and people interested in real estate. We're out there to help them achieve their goals, whatever their goals may be. And we talked about that earlier. The political leadership that we have, we need to communicate that architects are there to help them to resolve some of these issues that are important to them: affordable housing, sustainable design, climate change. We are constantly pushing those messages out, and the politicians are starting to listen to us. We actually do get feedback from time to time from politicians. We are making progress. Now, progress is painfully slow, and I apologize for that. We're doing the best we can, and we're not the only ones out there trying to make social media noise. But it would be very helpful to the profession as a whole if each one of us did our part individually to try to communicate our own value in our own way.
So another group in AIA, well, it's not in AIA, but that is trying to promote the value of the architect, is the Political Action Committee, the New Jersey's APAC. Stacey, can you talk a little bit about what APAC is doing and what they're going to be doing in the future?
Sure. New Jersey Architects Political Action Committee is a separate organization from AIA. That organization, I'm a board member on that organization. Our membership is open to all architects, or really open to anyone, but certainly not exclusive to AIA architects. We encourage all architects to join because having a voice in our Political Action Committee helps to support the entire profession, and all architects benefit from the opportunities that the New Jersey Architects Political Action Committee work on. So we are an organization that follows legislation and keeps track of what is going on in our state, and we create relationships with elected officials by offering our service and expertise if they were to have legislation come across their desk related to the construction industry, that we could be a support to them to help educate them on the ramifications of both sides of that decision and assist them in understanding and making decisions. We have had members of AIA New Jersey who have been invited to sit on governor's advisory councils in the past to help give information. Michael Hanrahan, who spoke earlier in today's meeting, did assist the governor as we were going through COVID. And those kinds of opportunities are available to us because of our members making relationships with these elected officials, so we can understand what their needs are. They can understand what resources we have available to them, And we can keep that line of dialogue open to convey the value that we bring to the table and how we can make their job easier and for them to be able to make intelligent decisions.
And the APAC is bipartisan, and it supports all the candidates that support the AIA agenda, basically.
That's correct.
So, Bill, whose job is it to communicate the value of the architect?
What do you mean whose job it is?
Whose job is it?
It's everyone's job.
I think
It's
so
all
too.
of us.
I think so too. But a lot of people sit back and say, "How come I have to pay so much dues to the AIA, and then I have to do all the work too?"
Well, we're not doing all the work. Some of the work is happening at AIA New Jersey. Some of it's happening at AIA National. The Political Action Committee gets us a seat at the table because it's through donations. I'm talking about reasonable donations. I mean, you need to be able to get the attention of the elected officials, elected leaders, so that we can communicate to them that we want to achieve their goals. Once they realize that we want to achieve their goals, help them achieve their goals, they realize that we're in a very unique position. We don't necessarily profit from developers developing huge tracts of land and then selling buildings at high prices. We can help politicians understand the complexities of the building code, how it affects affordable housing, how material choices affect affordable housing. Politicians look at that and they say, well, I'm getting information that I can actually understand from a source that I can actually trust, because these people are not necessarily directly benefiting from their advice. They're advising us on how to solve problems. Now, of course, as architects, we're problem solvers. We can solve the problem in any number of ways. And we'll be there to help solve the problem. But the problem needs a problem solver. So the fact that we're there and collecting a fee to help them solve the problem isn't the issue for these elected leaders. They're starting to understand that what we're actually trying to do is improve society, which is ultimately what they're trying to do. I mean, they put themselves out there, run for office and get elected. Then they have to deal with the press and the other party, whichever party you're from. And, it's not always fun. But, we can, help them to understand that. And then they understand the value of the architect. And as the political leadership understands it, it'll filter down to the journalists. And the journalists have a lot of power because they write about it, and then the public can read about it and realize, wow, I need an architect because I need to achieve my goal. I need my addition. I need my house. I need my factory expanded, whatever it is. And they realize that. And then we become the first call they make instead of the last call.
Right. So a lot of times the first calls are to contractors or are to somebody else that they feel architects are for rich people, or architects are not for me because I can save some design. I can do that myself. How do we stay top of mind in the general public ahead of contractors who seem to spend a lot more money, both in their political action committee and just on advertising in general?
They have a vested interest in the advice that they give you. And that's as simple as that.
It isn't so much the amount, or maybe it is, that engineers or contractors or other associations give to the campaign. And back when I was involved with AIA, we had a lobbyist that sort of worked with us. He was also our public relations consultant. And I got an education in working with government. And we had to be reactive rather than proactive. I think with a more active participation with PAC, we can get to the table and actually propose legislation rather than oppose legislation that we're lucky enough to find out about. And I think that's something that we can all kind of buy into it. It used to be that, oh, I don't want to get my hands dirty by giving political money. Okay, there are a lot of people that thought that way in the 80s. I don't know if it's still the same today amongst membership. This is an interesting story. One of the things that came up when I was the president was a turf war between architects and engineers. And there was a bill that was introduced by the engineers that indicated that shore houses, New Jersey shore houses, could be done by engineers. They didn't have to be done by architects. The engineers were promoting that since most of these structures had to be on piles, in effect, the building was incidental to the engineering.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah.
That bill could have been passed. We made lots of travel down to Trenton, met with a lot of, and the fact was, the politicians don't like to get involved in turf wars. So they said, you two guys solve it yourself. Okay, do you know who represented the engineers? Joe Simonetta. Joe and I go back that far. Okay, Joe was a very good one, but he also represents the architects in a public sense very well. But those are the kind of things that were reactive. We should be more proactive. One of the things that the committee is doing, Bill, Stacey, myself, on this designing value column, that's the title of it at the moment, is New Jersey. I learned New Jersey is the only state in the union that does not allow exceptions for any building. Architects must do any building that has been designed for human use. Now, I think, Brian, you mentioned there may have been an exception.
Just for single family owner occupied structure.
Yeah.
That's the only exception.
Other states have all kinds of exemptions.
Yeah.
Where you don't need a license to do a building.
In New Jersey, if your building is for people, you need an architect.
So,
Yes.
So, I mean, we need to be more proactive. We need to believe that we can make a difference in our profession.
So Bill and Stacey, are there openings on the Public Awareness Committee?
There are always
Absolutely.
openings. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I'd like to invite anybody on the call that would like to be more involved to reach out to Bill and
Sure.
sign up for the committee, and we'll find something for you to do. There is a lot of work ahead of us this next year. We were just on that call this morning.
And even for people who maybe don't feel they have the time to jump onto the committee and are observers of social media, we put out content on social media multiple times a week. And the easiest way for you to just start dipping your toes in are to follow our pages, click like, share content that we share, comment on content that we share. So you don't even necessarily have to do a full dive in or make a big time commitment, but just start to spread the word, because every time you are interacting with AIA New Jersey social media, that is bumping up the penetration of the content that we're pushing out, which at the end of the day benefits all of our members and really the whole profession.
Is there room on the APAC for people to get involved?
Absolutely. In fact, this year we have had a very robust membership. So there's opportunity for everyone who's a member of APAC to participate in our meetings as an observer, or you can become a member at large, or you can become a section representative. So there are multiple opportunities depending on your availability and your interest in participating.
And also, we've also found the best strategy to interacting with the politicians is to have a PAC member and a constituent of that politician go visit the politicians together. I don't know how that's working during COVID, but in a few months we'll be back to normal and we'll be visiting politicians again with our talking points in hand to really try to communicate the value of the architect to the politicians directly. So I just want to move on now to a couple of slides to talk about value propositions and mapping this. This is just for us internally, not communicating this to the public. When we talk about the value proposition canvas. Now, this is really talking about what Bill was talking about, all presentation goals, right? Understanding your customer and understanding their goals, and also understanding yourself as an architect and how you can really solve their problems, bring them gains, and relieve their pains. So do any of you use something similar to this, or scratch paper or some kind of diagramming to bring yourself to a true understanding of what you can do for your clients?
Anyone in particular? Should I take it?
Just go right ahead.
Okay, my entire website is built around this proposition. So if a client goes to my website, they're going to see examples of my work. You know, they'll see the pretty pictures and all of that stuff that we like to put up on the internet. And then there is a whole series of articles that talk about value, talk about, you know, without getting too technical, you know, about how I help them minimize their risk, about why it's important to minimize their risk, about why it's important to make proper decisions. My entire website is built around this whole concept. And I think that we all need to approach our clients from the client's perspective. And instead of, you know, we are trained, when we're in college, we're trained to satisfy our professors who are also architects. So in a lot of ways, we graduate with a handicap where we don't see the client. We're trying to impress each other all the time. And that's great. And I love that. And I love all of my colleagues and I want to help everybody. And you know, everyone wants to impress everyone else. But the most important person to impress is the client. They've got to be impressed.
Absolutely.
And you've got to leave them with the impression that they will be impressed by what you're going to do because you're going to help them achieve their goals. So like I said, my entire website is created around this value proposition canvas.
Right. And I think it's a wonderful tool for everybody to use. And there's a couple of other slides that are similar to this kind of thing, where it's just understanding your customer, understanding what their fears, like you said, they're fearing risking losing money or not seeing the money that they're spending. You know, they may need or want more space. They may need help navigating the permitting process. And the architect can help. The architect can map directly, one for one, exactly what they're going through. You know, maybe you're going to go over the budget, but most likely not if you're using an architect in an AIA contract. We're going to design it within budget. That's our job. Otherwise, we might have to redesign it for free, and nobody wants to do that. We can solve their problems. It is absolutely about achieving their goals, minimizing their pain, and communicating the value of the architect individually and as a group to the public. So with that, I'd like to thank everybody on the panel, and we're going to open it up to questions now. You guys can type them in the chat box or put them, raise hand, and we'll get to some of your questions. I know there was one in the Q&A. The general public's perception about an architect is not clear. When they have a project, they rely more on a contractor or a building inspector. How can legislation change that perception in a way that an architect will be a necessity at every level when a project is submitted before a municipality? Does anybody want to answer that?
I can answer it.
Go right ahead, Bill.
You do it by communicating your value. Now, my clients find me, they don't go to contractors first, but I do have some that will go to a contractor first. And depending on who the contractor is, they'll send them to me as an architect. Because the contractor, if the contractor is in control of every aspect of what's happening, the clients perceive that as a risk. There's horror stories all over the place about how they hired the wrong contractor. So, you know, a lot of people are aware that the construction industry has a bit of a difficult reputation. And a lot of times it's not that the contractor is being bad, it's that the contractor is not helping them to achieve their goals the way we can. So by individually, by you as an architect in a firm, or you running a firm, if you communicate the value of an architect and you communicate your own value, the clients will start calling you first. And it's happened to me. Now, I've been in practice for 30 years and I've been grappling with this problem for 30 years, but it's true. If we can work together, you know, the state level, the section level, component level, and the individual members, if we all work towards the same goal, we can change that proposition, and the clients will start calling us.
Next question. How do you keep the expectations of your clients realistic with all the unrealistic expectations that are depicted on home improvement reality shows and on TV and social media? Stacey, how do you manage your clients' expectations?
Well, this is a real challenge. I went through a phase where I was doing room makeover projects for the Make-A-Wish Foundation, and it was giving me a real life experience of what goes on those TV shows, because oftentimes I would be working with a child who really couldn't be far from their room. And so we would have to displace them for as short a period as possible and actually do the build, you know, in an overnight situation. So I think we have a couple of problems. First of all, a lot of the content produced on HGTV is coming out of Canada, where they have different regulations and codes and allowances there. And so our customers who are watching those programs don't necessarily know how those things translate into what you can do here. Then you also see circumstances where the project never even talks about what the budget is, or the whole thing is, you know, encapsulated into 30 minutes and appears that
they only had $1,000 cash and they redid the whole, yeah.
Exactly. So yeah, it does create a really challenging situation for architects and builders to help clients have a more realistic understanding of what the experience is going to be like. So it is important for us to be able to go into our circumstances of meeting with particularly residential clients, because most of these shows are residential, although there are some other types of programs with restaurants and things like that. But to be able to help the client understand, at the first meeting, I try to give them a very real understanding of what the steps are going to be and what their role is, what the decision-making process really looks like, so that both of them, you know, they understand the steps that I'm going to be taking, and they also understand what their responsibilities are and how they affect the schedule and the decision-making process, and the benefits of spending the time during the design phase and the planning phase to make, you know, take the time commitment there to make good decisions. So you really have a set of construction documents that are pretty comprehensive in explaining what the specifications are, what the design intent is. Sometimes clients, you know, they just want to get a set of construction documents as fast as possible in for permit, without realizing that having a very loose set like that is going to expose them to a lot of risk during the bidding process, and they will have a ton of questions that they will need to answer during construction. They'll end up in a situation where every Friday the contractor calls and says, oh, next week I'm going to be installing the windows, the doors, the tile, the faucets, the light fixtures. Go find something tomorrow that's in stock at your local store that will suit the, you know, what your goals are. And that's terrible. You come up with the worst possible project under those circumstances. And I feel like it's my job as the architect to explain, here's why I'm going to force you to do your homework up front, because you're going to get real bids when you go out to bid, because they comprehensively understand everything they're going to be buying and installing. And you are going to have a much more relaxed experience during construction, because everything is going to be already decided.
I have always thought throughout my career that having a really well detailed, complete set of plans was going to help communicate my value. And I thought that because giving my plans are a set of instructions to the contractor to build something. If I got a set of IKEA instructions to build something as complex as a hospital, I would want to pull my hair out. Yet sometimes architects are sending a set of IKEA drawings to build something, and the contractors are not going to think that we're valuable. So having a really high quality set of detailed, complete plans as a set of instructions to the contractor allows those contractors to get to then say, hey, I know an architect that'll help you out, because it's going to be easier for him when he's or her when they're using your plans, right? So
Right.
I've always struggled to pay attention to that detail, get my plans to a level that I thought were, top notch. And now in my job as a spec writer, I see plans from the most famous architecture firms in the world coming across my desk every day. And I'll tell you, a lot of them look like IKEA instructions.
Right. Yep.
It's communicating my value is not just verbal, and it's not just blowing my own horn. It's in everything that I do. It's in the service that I do to the profession, that I do to my community. I'm trying to get that out there, that I'm trustworthy. So Paul Tajilov says, the builder provides a tangible product. The architect provides an intangible product. Seems we need to show the texture of our work, the essential nature. Key, I think, is communication, talking with people and not at them, slowly building trust. Architects were often rated as the most trusted profession. Ed, what do you think about that?
I think that's right on. One of my notes were if the conversations had gone that way in terms of additional services or what is the trust that you develop with your client will go a long way to him listening to you and believing that you can benefit him in any number of ways. What Stacey was talking about, what we've all been talking about, is up front, a lot of mistakes are made before there's an architect. But then the architect has to live with them. And what's happened is people who are not trained to really value design, as we are, gets to be the owner's representative. Something that traditionally architects in the owner-architect agreement said, we were the representatives of the owner. Now you're getting other people, real estate people, contractors,
Right.
all kinds of other people saying, I'm going to save you money. I'm going to, architects can never bring a job in on budget. Okay. And a lot of people have experience where that's been the problem. A lot of times, my experience, and one of the things that I said in my bio, is the first firm I worked for, I was exposed to design build. I learned some things. There are a lot of things, not design, but other things. One of the things that Rothe Johnson did after establishing a fairly successful architectural firm is I also established a design build firm. I thought it was a natural expansion, really, of an architectural firm. That was helpful. And now that I'm retired, I have a company called B4 Development. And it really is trying to get to be positioned with the owner, with the project owner, to to look at the project from all aspects of design, cost, schedule, so that the project matches, it all fits. And then it'll be a much more successful project. And that's what Stacey was trying, I believe, to describe that she tries to do with her clients. If architects can regain that ground where they are the trusted advisor for a project, as well as the architect. That's
Right.
what we can do to promote. That's what
Bob Iamello said in the question and answer, I've found that managing clients' expectations is key to having a successful project. I do that by staying in close contact, listening, and communicating their needs and desires in an understanding way. This is different for everyone, however. The basic concept remains the same. Services are tailored for each client. Does anyone on the panel have similar experiences?
Absolutely. That's spot on. And make sure that you build that into your fee so that the client is paying for it. But you absolutely need to be involved and stay in close contact with the client, not just during the development of the design and the construction drawings, but also in the bidding process and during the construction. In fact, one of the most important facets and most important phases of a project is in the bidding process, when you're talking with the client about the various bids before they have decided on the contractor. Those conversations can build enormous trust and go a long way to alleviating the fears of the client as they make the decision, because there's an opportunity cost here. I'm not going with contractor B, I'm not going with contractor A, I'm going with contractor C. So once they make that decision, they can't go back and engage contractor A. So that, especially in the bidding and negotiation phase, is critical. But you have to make sure you build that into your fee, and you should not be shy about building it into your fee, because it's tremendously valuable for the client to have the benefit of that conversation. So I absolutely agree completely with that approach.
Ron Weston says, architects generally shy away from understanding business matters, which starts in architecture schools. Do we need a big push on educating architects to talk the talk of business and finance, not at the detriment of design, but to support the design?
Oh my God, this was me 30 years ago. I tried. Mm-hmm. They don't want it in the design studios. They don't want to hear about it. This is why I ended up taking a year off in the middle to study managerial economics, study optimizing, study supply and demand curves and all of the stuff that goes into people making design decisions, because these design decisions are very complex. I did it myself in the middle of my education because I felt that I had to. It seemed to me to be completely crazy to sit in a studio with a professor. In many cases, and I have nothing against professors, okay? It's like some of them don't practice. Some of them are all theoretical and all, and you need that, But at the time I was in school, there was little or no grounding in the economics of design. So I had to do it on my own, and I'm glad I did, because it made me a better architect, I think, and it made me better able to help my clients achieve their actual goals. So thanks, Ron, for that, because that was me.
So I got to tell you, when I'm doing my specifications, it really depends highly on who the client is, on what level of economic tightness I have about the specifications. If I'm doing specifications for Facebook's new offices, they're getting mock-ups all over the place. Everything's aesthetically valuable. They're spending a lot of money, and they know they're spending a lot of money, and it's not as budget conscious. But when I'm doing it for Customs and Border Protection in Newark and their new offices going in, it's my tax dollars that are actually paying for this project. So I tighten up those specs so tight. There's no mock-ups in there. Everything's out. It gets... I know every line that I put on the paper and every word that I type in that spec book is costing the owner money. And I have to pay attention to that. I have to be the advocate for that. So if I don't understand the economics of building, if I don't understand the economics of what I'm putting on the paper and how that's going to translate into the building, I'm not really providing value. I'm not providing that service to the owner. I'm just doing what I want. And that's one of the things that has really kind of irked me throughout the era of glass boxes and magazine architecture was so much that architects who were not paying attention to their clients' goals were getting praised so highly. And I've seen a lot of that kind of start to go away, but we still get some of it out there, especially in the magazine architecture, where the owner was forgotten about, the public was forgotten about, and the building is a monument to the architect. And that's a detriment to us communicating value.
It depends on what the client's trying to achieve. The goal of the client may be a magazine piece. I've had clients approach me and say, you know, I want to do this. I want it to be great. You know, I don't want to spend a lot of money. They always say that.
I don't want to spend a lot of money.
But they know they're going to. And I want a magazine piece at the end. I mean, public entities do this too. I want to build a new train station. I want it to be absolutely spectacular, world class, and I know I'm spending tax money, but we're going to get a benefit on the other side. And the goal of the client is, that's why it's important to understand those goals, because if you can really get a handle on what the client's goals are, you can really do something.
Bruce Turner says, AIA understands the value and need of understanding the economics of architecture. It has been studied and discussed at the highest levels of the organization for many years. We at the grassroots level of the organization and profession need to embrace this, promote this, and help architects achieve this. I agree with Bruce 100%. There's a lot of tools out there, both on the AIA website and when you get involved in the organization, that you can then use to really promote this out there by yourself. Like, you don't need the public affairs committee. You can go tackle the promoting your own value by yourself too.
Yeah, we're all on the same team.
Right.
I mean, we're working from the, I don't want to say this, that we're, dictating, we're not shouting down. We're working from the top down, and our individual membership, including myself, is working from the bottom up. So we're all on the same team, and we're all trying to improve the profession. And it's slow, but we are getting there. We're making a lot of progress. We're one of the most active chapters in AIA in terms of our social media and our outreach. We're followed closely by a lot of other states. I mean, I get feedback directly from people from time to time in other states, and they just can't believe, what we've been able to do. We're keeping it up. Stacey's been absolutely invaluable in producing content that then gets leveraged out over social media accounts. This is the new world of media. We can't rely on journalists to write great things about us. We have to do it ourselves. And there's nothing wrong with that.
There was at one time something wrong with self-promotion for an architect. Do we still suffer from that mentality?
We have to get over that. We have to stop feeling that way.
How, like, isn't this supposed to be a noble profession? Don't I bring myself down to the level of an ambulance chaser if I'm advertising and putting my face up on billboards? I know many people have this feeling. It's a gut feeling.
Not at all. I don't have that problem at all. I mean, I'm promoting architecture as a whole, and to my clients, I promote my own version of architecture, but I always tailor it to match up with what their goals they're trying to achieve. I always talk about it in terms of what they're trying to achieve, not what I'm trying to achieve.
If they don't know you're alive, you're dead.
That's right. That's brilliant, Ed. That was brilliant.
It's so true. So we're at the end of our question and answer period. I want to give each of you a chance to give us some parting thoughts, your closing statements for the panel, and then we'll end our presentation for the night.
I will say that I want to invite everybody who participated tonight to further engage with us. We have lots of different ways you can get involved. You can join a committee, you can ask a question of us, you can give us an assignment, some sort of challenge that you'd like us to work on. But at AIA New Jersey, we are very excited to be your partner in promoting the profession, promoting architects, and promoting great design. Thank you.
Ed?
If everyone who has listened to this can provide an example of their work a project they've done, even one, that they say, I provided value to the client, and here's what it is. It can be economic, it could be social, it could be anything. But we've got to begin to convince the public of our value. Any examples that you want to share helps the profession. We have a very active public affairs committee, very well led, and there are so many new ways to communicate to the public. Let's do it.
There's one new question that just popped up. So before I let you go, Bill, I want to ask this question because I think it's important and I think it can really help. Susanna asks, as a recently sole practicing architect, how can I explain my value to a potential client when they are interviewing other architects and I do not know the standard of fees? Will the law where architects cannot discuss fees ever be changed where new architects can know how much to charge for services?
That's a great question.
I thought so too.
I posed that question when I was president in 1987 and said that we should get data from our members so that we can see what's going on. And AIA, National, I thought they're going to hang me.
Right.
And with good reason, because somewhere along the line, I believe AIA was fined by the
Justice.
SEC, antitrust, whatever it was, $1 million for architects, AIA trying to fix fees. Now, we weren't trying to fix fees. We were just trying to figure out the value that we should reasonably be charging and not cutting each other's throats. So that was 20, 30 years ago. Maybe it's changed. But
So one of my
There's
views of
economic
this-
reasons for that, though.
Yeah. One of my ways to deal with this situation, though, is you don't need to win every job. So as a starting out architect, you got to send out a proposal. Make sure that you're getting what you want in your proposal. Don't negotiate against yourself.
Yeah.
So you figure out how much time is going to take, how much is this going to cost me, how much money do I need, and put a fair proposal out there for you. If you get turned down or the client starts to argue about the money, then you may take a look at what you're charging and why. But it's not always necessary to know what everybody else is charging in your neighborhood unless you're competing for something on an apples to apples basis. But I don't think there's so much competition as we think there is between us, especially for smaller sole practitioner jobs. There's a big differentiator between William J. Martin, AIA, Brian W. Penschow, AIA, Ed Rothe, FAIA, AIA, and Stacey Kliesch, AIA. We all do different things. We're all going to listen to the client's goals, fears, but we're going to approach the problem and solve them a little bit differently, each one of us. How our personalities mesh with the client is probably going to be the determining factor over what it is we actually do in terms of the competition. So I say, don't negotiate against yourself until you know for a fact.
I have some practical answers to this, also to Susanna's question. It's not necessary to know what other people are charging. If you want to do a good job, you got to put together a list of services that you believe that the client needs in order to meet their goals. And then you assign value to that and assign the amount of money that you need in order to cover your overhead, your time, and your expertise, meetings, all of those things. And then you prepare that proposal, you present it to the client. The client is not only going to make a choice just on your fee. They're always concerned about risk. So what you need to do is you need to reach the client before they get to the decision-making process so that you can talk about how their goals align with your proposal. I always say to clients, look, I don't I don't know what the other firm is giving you. I have no way of knowing that. So what I'm giving you is what you told me that you need from me. My fees are reflective of what I need to charge you to give you good professional service. I won't compromise the quality of my services. So this is the minimum that I need in order to help you accomplish your goals. And I have clients that call me and say, your fee is 4 times as high as the other 3 fees that I got from other
I got
architects.
10 times once.
And they still hire me because I'm able to explain to them why they need the services that I am proposing to them. And once they understand that you're there to help them achieve their goals, the fee becomes much less of an issue. It's really more about, okay, let's get to work. Let's achieve those goals that we just discussed in detail.
Bruce Turner says the fee question is at the core of understanding the economics of architecture. There's a difference between telling someone what their fee should be and understanding the economics of the market. So that's exactly right.
True.
So if you're the only architect in a market and there's no substitution, no choice, then you may be able to charge whatever you wish, but that's not going to happen in New Jersey.
And Susanna, I find with sole practitioners, chances are you're not charging enough.
Right.
Not every sole practitioner, but when you're just starting out, you should probably be worried that the fee you're calculating is too low.
Right.
If some other person is getting the job over you because they're charging less than you, then they're probably not even making enough money to cover expenses. So if you have put your number together based on, your expenses, your time, and making profit, then your number is right. So don't stress out about, what's everybody else charging. Come up with the right number to provide the value for the client, covering the expenses that you need for your business practice, and then confidently present that number, because really you should be charging the client for the value of what they're receiving. So for example, as you become more productive over time and you are more familiar with the code, so you don't need to spend as much time on research, it doesn't mean you should lower the cost of your services because you're more efficient. You should just be making more profit because you're more efficient. So your number shouldn't be relative to what everybody else is charging. It should be relative to the value of your service.
Absolutely. That is absolutely 100% correct. And I just want to add something to that. You may not realize it. Some of the sole practitioners may not realize this, but it's very well known in commercial development that architects have a lot of trouble assigning the fees to what they do. And there's a lot of aggressive developers that will try to push and push and push and drive your fees down. Now, it's very well known and they use it as a weapon. And some homeowners do the same thing. They try to treat it like it's a car. They can buy the same car at every dealership. They're not buying the same car from you that they're buying from the next architect. You're giving them a package of services that will help them achieve their goals. Just because your fee is higher, all that means is you just have to explain it a little bit more detail to the client so that they'll understand why they're getting that fee. I will also say that architects' fees and estimation of fees is not data that's just collected by, AIA. There are groups like RS Means. I don't know if anyone's familiar with the RS Means book, the cost estimating books. They have within their books estimations of fees, what the fees should be. In fact, 20 years ago when I started getting the RS Means books, and they're not inexpensive to buy, but they contain an enormous amount of very useful data. They had a section there on because they're sold to builders and developers. There's a section in there on how to estimate an architect's fee. And up to back then when I was doing it, I was very intrigued by this because it seemed to be very much lacking data. It was just an estimation table. But at the top of it, it said architectural service data. And there was a note that said, these are minimum architect's fees below which good professional service cannot be expected. So they understand that below a certain amount, they can't get the services they need from you. So you have to push back. You have to say, you need these services, and I'm charging you for these services because they're necessary to achieve your goals. So, I just want our membership out there, especially the sole proprietors starting out. We're not working in a vacuum. This is very well known throughout the industry by all players. So you need to push back. Be polite, but explain. And don't be shy about charging for what you need in order to provide good professional service. Because in the end, good professional service is what the client actually wants.
Great. With that, I think we're going to end our presentation. Thank you very much, everybody. Everybody have a great 2021. And we hope to see you in person this year.
Oh my God,
Marissa?
yes, please.
Wait, you're muted, Marissa.
I just want to say thank you to all of our panelists and our moderator. This was a phenomenal presentation. It met and exceeded my expectations. So thank you very much, everyone, for participating and tuning in. And hopefully we see you again soon.
Great. We had a great time. Thank
Yes,
you.
this was fun. Have a great day, everybody. Have a great month. Have a great year, the year of the vaccine.